Howdy folks, Flarev here. I've got something to share with you. So a little while back, I mentioned that I had written off a letter to the Archbishop of Seattle. In this letter, I talked about a variety of things, basically asked him a number of questions about some things that happened in the month of November, including the withdrawing of charitable works from the Washington, D.C. area by that dude over there, and the Bishop Tobin Kennedy incident, and the Catholic hospitals and right to die issue, and those sorts of things. I wasn't satisfied with just listening to the pundits speak. I wanted to actually get some information from the source. And the closest source that I had was the local archdiocese and the local archbishop. So I wrote him a letter. And it was a long letter, and I may actually open the letter up and let you all read it. I was not expecting a reply, really. I mean, I was hoping, but I wasn't really expecting. So imagine my surprise when about a week ago, this, can you see the letterhead there? I got a 3-page letter in response from the Archbishop of Seattle. Very nice guy. I'm not going to read this letter to you word by word. I'm not going to publish it. I'm not going to type it up. I don't want to break his trust, so to speak. I approached him not as a member of the news media or anything like that, and while I make no claims to having a broad and vast base of subscribers, a vast audience, I certainly don't want to put him in a position that he was not expecting to be. So I'm going to gloss over the details of the bulk of the letter. But there are a couple of things that I wanted to bring up in particular. And this is going to get to the point of this video, which is that our preconceptions color our perceptions. Archbishop Brunette says a couple of interesting things. He says, first of all, I found your letter particularly lucid and cogent coming from a secular point of view. Alright, that's the first thing that I want you to bear in mind. And that was toward the beginning of the letter, which he also calls a very kind and gracious letter, etc., etc. He apparently very much liked the style in which I wrote the letter. And that is relevant because of something in his closing paragraph. He writes, I appreciate your letter. It was a beautiful letter. It expressed many intriguing thoughts. Obviously, you are not an atheist. Probably more of an agnostic. So I got this letter, and I was reading it aloud to my wife at the table, and we both, as soon as I hit that line, we both just cracked up. Because what can you really say to that, right? It seems to me that, notwithstanding any of the points that I covered in the letter, all of which, in my opinion, he kind of skirted around, I don't feel that any of those points were really addressed head-on. Although I do appreciate the fact that he did say that he feels that the church and the secular world need to have a dialogue. But aside from all that, I'm left with this feeling that so devout a man as he has limited the way in which he sees the world so much through the vehicle of his religion that he interprets the fact that I took the time to write a thoughtful, polite, considerate, and well-considered letter as though this cannot possibly be behavior exhibited by someone who does not profess a belief in a God. Does this sound right to any of you out there? And I'm talking to theists as well as atheists, and I'm sure that I know what the atheist answer is going to be. But it just seems kind of silly to me to take your position and use it to so filter all the input that comes in that absolutely everything that comes in is defined by that limited worldview and is bent and shaped even beyond the will of those who are expressing themselves in ways that are, in some cases, contrary to your own. And that's what I'm doing here. I am, and I did approach this letter that I wrote to the Archbishop from a very secular point of view. I made some secular points from a secular position, and so he is right to call me secular. The somewhat dismissive tone with which he refers to secularism, well, fine. I understand the bias, at least somewhat, of the Catholic Church, or perhaps understand is the wrong word, but I am at least aware of it. And that really doesn't bother me very much. It only bothers me when it results in witch burnings and inquisitions and things like that, but that day is long gone. But what is bugging me about this, and why I feel that ultimately, as cool as it is to have received a letter on the official Archdiocese letterhead, I feel like I have accomplished nothing, is because of that one very thing. Obviously, you are not an atheist. What? I ask you, all of you out there on YouTube, what? So maybe what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to publish the letter that I wrote. I'm going to have to just put it out there and let you guys read it. It's long. I'm not going to blame you if not one of you decides to pick it up and read it, but it is a letter that was well written enough to provoke a response from someone who's pretty high up in the church, at least in my area, from an atheist. So that's something. But perhaps the only way he could bring himself to respond, and this is what's disturbing to me, and I almost want to write him another letter, but I don't want to waste his time. But it's kind of disturbing to me to think that the only way that he could bring himself to respond to my letter is if he cast me in a light other than that in which I presented myself. The only way he could conceive of a thoughtful or beautiful action occurring was if I was not what I said I was, if I was simply deluding myself. Because in his worldview, perhaps only people who believe in a God, even an agnostic sense of God, even an indeterminate sense of God, in his view, perhaps, only people who believe in a God can know and express beauty. So this has me thinking, and evaluating and re-evaluating, as it should, all of the things that I tend to say and think about others around me, about all of you out there on YouTube, atheists and theists alike, all of us engaged in this dialogue. Well, I'd like to know your thoughts, so hit me back and let me know what you think. I will try to type up that letter and get it published and probably put a link to it on the sidebar so that you're all welcome to go ahead and read it. I'm not going to type up the Archbishop's response, obviously, but yeah, feel free to weigh in on this issue. I'd like to know what you think, and I'd like to know in particular how your worldview, how your view of the way that the world is shaped and made colors your perceptions. Thank you. Take care. Good luck.